We are humbled to have with us Eika Banerjee, one of India's leading women business leaders, and has, in pursuing her purpose, founded Echem Resonance, an organization where she, along with her community of researchers and facilitators, delve into ancient wisdom to solve contemporary issues. Among other initiatives, Echem also blends modern-day management practices, leadership frameworks, and corporate strategic directioning with perspectives imbibed from time-tested ancient wisdom, history, mythology, and literature. These are the practices Eika is here to share with us to help us evolve, because eventually it all begins with a mindset. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Eika Banerjee, founder and CEO Echem, board member, Oxford Chevening Fellow, Echem Resonance.
Thank you. Hi, and actually I must begin with thanking MMA Impact for having this event here and having it offline. And it really is good to come back on stage, see people and talk to them, and not do that in Zoom screens, where I truly believe that for the last 2.5 years, the most common phrase we all heard was, "Can you hear me? Can you see me? My mic's not working. I'm sorry, somebody came into the frame." So it's really good to be back here. Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you so much, MMA Impact. And it's good to be back. You might be wondering about what a mythologist and a historian and somebody who deals with ancient wisdom is doing here, where we are talking about shaping the future. Well, I'll go back to what Arvind was sharing with us a little while ago. And it's no surprise that whether it's the Matrix, whether it's the metaverse, whether it's Doctor Strange, they've all been inspired in their own way from the past. So the reason I stumbled upon the past is because I truly believe that for a civilization that has 5,000 years of documented history and at least 10,000 years of undocumented history, they must have cracked some survival hacks. And that's where I go back to every time I need to find some answers. So when I went about hunting for answers on shaping the future and went back into the past, here's what I found. I found that human evolution has been through 4 stages, or we're stepping into the 4th stage. So when the human civilization was being organized, the first phase was that of just figuring out what needs to be done. And that yuga across all our scriptures was actually called the Karma Yuga, which is basically SOPs, processes, how does the wheel work, how does the fire work, how does construction happen, how does society get structured, the SOP manuals. And what's interesting is the output that emerged from that yuga, which is basically your Vedas. All of us know about the 4 Vedas. They are basically your SOP manuals on how life works. From the Karma Yuga, because by now we knew muscle memory had kicked in, we knew our processes, we knew how to produce, we knew what to produce. The next stage then was this age of seeking knowledge. It was the age of asking questions about why does this happen, how does it work, really what moves the world. And so what was called the Jnana Yuga, or the age of knowledge, then produced the output that was your Upanishads, the Vedanta, the Aranyaka commentary. These were all knowledge texts. The yuga that came after that, which is about 2000 years ago, plus minus 300 years, is the age where religion got organized. Now the moment religion got organized, and all your religions, irrespective of which one you take, then started recruiting. So this was the age of the popularity contest, about saying which religion can recruit better and faster. And so this was the age of storytelling. And that age was called the Bhakti Yuga. Right? So this was when stories were told, everything was made to look cool, and the output that this age produced therefore were your Puranas, were your Itihasa, all your story texts. Now you must be wondering why I'm talking about this. But before I get onto that, what's critical right now is that today we're at that transition age from the Bhakti Yuga to the next Yuga. And this is where we start crystal gazing. Now all our texts, whether they be the Vaivata Purana, whether they be the Vedas, all of them talk about the next age being the Nyaya Yuga. The Nyaya Yuga is the age of individual justice and liberty. The text that this will produce will of course be the outcome, But that's where my texts tell me we are heading towards. Now, why do I talk about this in a marketing conference where we are shaping the future with winning marketing organizations? Well, the history of industry hasn't been very different from the history of the humankind. So if you remember, we started corporatizing and organizing ourselves in what was earlier called the age of the industry. This was the time where assembly lines were created, where the vocabulary was that of productivity, where the conversation on the human resource was about log in, log out, pay for performance. This was the industrial age. From there, about 40 years ago is when we moved to what was called the information age, where the currency of conversation was data, was analytics, was trends, was patterns. From the age of the information, we moved to the age of the idea, right, which is where we've been for the last couple of years. The currency of conversation in the age of ideas is valuations, is the concept of the unicorn. I mean, really, what's a more fascinating idea than just the concept of the unicorn itself, right? But from today where we are, after having, and if you see this runs very parallel, right? So the karma age and the industry, karma yuga and the industry age, the Jnana yuga and the information age, the Bhakti yuga and the age of the idea. And therefore, if we are stepping into the Nyaya yuga, which is the age of individual rights and individual existence, then logically, the age of idea should follow into the age of the individual. And that's where we are sitting today. Now, if I go back again to the conversations we've been having since the morning, whether it's about the metaverse, whether it is the conversation about people seeking their own existence, finding their own communities, then you realize that the vocabulary needs to change. Now, what is the vocabulary of the age of the individual? Here again, I go back to my texts, and therefore, if we've been studying our industry in terms of P&Ls and product marketing, in terms of information and therefore services marketing, after that, the concept of valuations and therefore idea marketing, the next one for us logically is therefore about the individual and human marketing, putting the human at the center of your currency of conversation, not just at your currency of thought, but in your currency of evaluation, in your currency of communication, in your currency of content, in your currency of communities. It is the human. If it has to be the human, then how do you study the human? What's the framework for studying the human? So in the industry age, we knew that the framework for studying was your classic P&Ls, classic productivity matrices and financials. During the age of the ideas, it was very simply the rate at which information flew, the data, the trends, the analytics and the patterns. During the age of the ideas, like I said, it was about valuations. It was about the power of an idea. It was about the communication of an idea. In the age of the human, the framework that needs to come in, and again, I am very inspired by the frameworks of the past on this, is the framework which we call the human resonance framework. Now, when you study a human being, you study them in the context of their spheres of existence. So classically, and I go back to the concept of dharma, which is, of course, we all know that the Bhagavad Gita starts with dharma kshetre, kurukshetre. Dharma talks about 3 levels at which our existence exists. Now, dharma is not religion. Dharma is literally dharma, what I bear. It is my way of life. And in my way of life, as in the human way of life, in the human way of life, there are only 3 circles of influence. The first one is the swadharma, what I owe to myself. At the second level is what's called the aparadharma, that which I am bound to hold on to by virtue of where I am born, by jati, kala, vishay, vyakti. So which is the context in which I live. And the third level of dharma is what's called the paradharma, that which I owe to the universal order. Now, while I know this sounds esoteric, but if I have to apply it today to the context of how we need to think as marketers, as corporate citizens, it brings me down to these three frameworks which become the currency of the human resonance framework: me, mine, and mankind. Why it's interesting is, and I again go back to Arvind's presentation on this, is that when you're operating in the metaverse, you as the marketer are actually thinking about where you're playing at. Are you playing at the level of personal fulfillment, which is me and my relationship with myself? Are you playing at the level of mine fulfillment, which is, are you fulfilling me in the contexts of the relationships that I hold dear, in the contexts of my immediate organizations? Or are you fulfilling my urge and my urge and my duty and my desire to contribute to the larger mankind, which is the cause of community? The reason that I bring in the me, mine, and mankind framework is because in order to shape the future, in order to be a part of the humanity that is moving forward, we will need to start thinking in terms of the me, the mine, and the mankind framework. Now, we at Ecom Resonance, and we've done a lot of research by now in cracking all these three levels, where at the level of me, we actually talk to people in terms of their fears, their shadows. You know, we spoke about Google a little while ago, and I remember talking about the insights that Google had got. Think about it. Google knows your consumer better than your consumer's spouse knows your consumer. Google works at predicting, at analyzing, and that's what this journey of industry, information, and idea has allowed Google to enable, which is the journey with me. Google knows my fears, Google knows my shadows, my desires much better than my spouse does. And that is the future. How are you going to fulfill me in my relationship with myself? The second level, and as again I go back to what Arvind spoke about gorgeously, is that if my community is seen wearing a particular kind of jeans, then that's where I want to be. But more importantly, the fulfillment it provides to me in my relationship with my nearest and dearest ones. And then at the third level, the framework of the mankind, which is, in fact, Fritjof Capra has spoken about it beautifully in this whole concept of the systemic view of life, what we owe to the universe and the preservation of the universal order. That's actually where I'd like to leave you right now, in the context of saying that if you have to create a winning marketing organization from the future, you need to have seen what the trends have been. You need to move from the era of product marketing, which is history, service marketing, history, and frankly, ideas marketing or the story marketing, which is also now becoming history, to the idea of the individual marketing, putting them at the center and looking at personal fulfillment, and that being the currency of the measure of your success, of your campaigns, of your thought, because you're no longer selling either a product, nor a service, nor an idea, but you're actually selling personal fulfillment and personal resonance. And with that, I'd like to leave you. Do you want me to take questions? Do we have time for questions? I'm happy to take a couple of questions if that helps. No questions? Oh no. This is what happens when we come back after 2.5 years. Sure. Thank you then. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me here as well.
Thank you so much, Eika. Let's have a huge round of applause.